हरि ओम। सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। Hari Om, salutations to one and all. There was a seeker. As he was going along in the marketplace, he saw that there is a shop, and the title or the name of that shop was The Truth Shop. So he walked inside and he found that there was a gentleman who was sitting there. There was only one table. Gentleman is sitting here, across the table is one chair. So he went and sat there. So he went and asked that you have written here The Truth Shop. What do you sell here? He said, I sell the truth. He said, really? He said, yes. So I am a seeker of the truth. I want to know the truth. Please tell me, what is the price? So the person said, do you really want to know the truth? Will you be able to really pay the price? He said, yes, I am a seeker of truth. I want to know, I will pay the price. So the person asked once again, think over it, that will you really be able to pay the price to know the truth? He said, yes, I am very sure I will. You just tell me what is the price. And the person said, the security of your own beliefs is the price you need to pay to know the truth. Seeker thought, he got up quietly and went away. Just think about it. If we want to know what is the truth, what is the reality, how secure we are in our belief. The most fundamental belief that we have is this body is me and this world is real. These two beliefs. And Vedanta questions these two beliefs, and not only questions these two beliefs, it negates these two beliefs, saying these are just notions, these are not the truth, these are not the reality. So when we want to know the truth, this Nirvana Shatkam is to negate the false identification that we have built in our mind. So the false identification with the BMI is bondage. And to falsify the identification with the BMI is liberation. So our journey is from false identification to falsifying the identification. That's the journey of a Vedantic seeker. So we have seen yesterday about this whole ignorance cycle, so that has been given to you, that how the root cause is the ignorance of the self. And when I don't know that self, I identify falsely with the body, mind, intellect. That is called Dehatma Bhav. The Bhav of Atma. Atma here means I. Deha is the body. So I feel I am this body. As a result, because they are by themselves incomplete, I feel incomplete. And then the whole cycle starts. Vasana, desire, thought, action, result being temporary, again it strengthens the vasana. So this cycle goes on. By the great compassion of the Lord, blessing of a great master, one comes to become even aware that I am actually bound, I am trapped in this cycle. So then we have the steps to acquire self-knowledge. Right from the first stage where one is doing selfish actions, one has to see the limitation of that selfishness. One has to see the limitation of what it creates, the stress that it creates, the split personality that it creates. Slowly, slowly one continues to do action because one cannot stop, does karma yoga, practices upasana. In such a mind, the intensity to know the truth will increase. So a person will seek the teacher, gain the knowledge, ask the questions about the self. And through listening, reflecting and contemplation, the person comes to understand. First, listening is to determine the truth. Reflecting is to get conviction, clarity and conviction about the truth, intellectual clarity and conviction. So yesterday we spoke about the study groups, that Gurudev started these study groups. Weekly once, the group meets, the interested seekers, they come together, they study a systematic scheme of books so that Vedanta is introduced logically, and the methodology followed is discussion, not a lecture. Because through that discussion, the churning happens, mananam. So when there is intellectual conviction, then the practice has to happen, which is contemplation. So that the viparit bhavana that I have, that I am this body, that bhavana still remains, in spite of intellectually knowing. How will that go? By repeated contemplation that yes, I am Brahman, I am not this body, mind and intellect. That constant practice makes the mind absorb. So that is called Savikalpa Samadhi, where the mind gets absorbed, becomes silent. Still the duality remains, that I am the meditator, there is a meditated, and I am doing meditation. And right now the mind has become quiet. This practice of Savikalpa Samadhi more and more leads a person to Nirvikalpa Samadhi, where even that distinction of meditation, meditator, meditated goes away. So all the bhavana that we have, the vasanas that we have, because of which we identify with the body, mind, intellect, lots and lots of them get destroyed in Samadhi. Samadhi is like the laser beam. It's very thin, but very intense, and it strikes very powerful. So in that way the ego as though explodes when one goes into the state of Samadhi, where one consciously experiences that absence of BMI, absence of any form of duality, and conscious experience of this Om, awareness. which we experience in daily life in the state of deep sleep unconsciously. Once Gurudev was asked by somebody that, Swamiji, what is the difference between deep sleep and meditation? So Gurudev gave a very fantastic reply. He said, deep sleep is like casual leave. Meditation is like a transfer. So in casual leave, you take leave for 3 days, 4 days, again you come back. So like that, deep sleep is like casual leave. You go inside, body, mind, intellect becomes unmanifest, ego becomes unmanifest, again one comes back. But meditation is like a transfer from one place to another. So one state to another state altogether with complete awareness. So that is Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and this practice, again and again one has to practice this, because subtler and subtler vasanas will be there, which will push a person out. Ramakrishna used to go into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, stay there for some time, sometimes on days on end, and then again come back. So the vasana will push. Ultimately, through constant practice of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, one gets established in the self, that is Atmanishtha. Now this whole path is given to us not to make us scared, but to make us aware that there is a long way to go, and that one has to put in the consistent effort. So we are on this aspect of Nididhyasan, contemplation. Yesterday we spoke about Shravan, Manan. We are on Nididhyasan, and we are using this text called Nirvan Shatkam for our Nididhyasan. What is contemplation, etc.? The notes we have given to you, you can go through them in the detail. This book is written by Bhagwan Adi Shankaracharya, one of the greatest minds that the country or the world itself has ever seen. A brilliant thinker, person who had such deep love for the culture. And it was he who gave the intellectual direction. Because when he came, there was absolutely no direction. Intellectual directionlessness is a very, very dangerous thing. Because our intellect determines the direction of our life. And in the society, if the individuals do not have a direction, that society doesn't evolve. Selfishness is rampant. So he gave that intellectual directionlessness. Before him there was Buddha. Hindu culture had declined and a lot of animal sacrifices, rites, rituals, many things happened. So he came up, he revived, started his own following. As long as he was there, things were fine. Again, as per time, again the culture went through decadence. Buddhism also declined, Hinduism also declined. In such an era, Shankaracharya ji was born, where there is no direction, complete confusion, and then one gets stuck in mechanical performance of action. So he revived the entire Vedic philosophy by reviving the essence of the Veda, which is the knowledge of the Upanishads, Vedanta. Think about it, if Vedanta is removed from Vedic philosophy, from the Hindu culture, what will Hindu culture be? Only an empty bundle of rites and rituals, without knowing what the meaning is, where does it lead to, why should I do. It is a Vedanta philosophy which is the heart of Hindu culture. And it is a universal philosophy. It is not addressed to a Hindu. It is that which is to make us aware of our own divine nature. And Vedanta says that all of us are divine. Amritasya putraha. Hence it is a universal philosophy. So to preserve Vedanta is a very important aspect. If Vedanta gets destroyed, Hindu culture will get destroyed. Without Vedanta, Hindu culture is nothing. So he revived this Vedanta philosophy. And how did he do that? He wrote the commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, the Brahma Sutras, made many compositions for the seekers to be even able to understand the Gita, the Upanishads and Brahma Sutra. So Tattva Bodh, Atma Bodh, Vivek Chudamani, so many compositions in Vedanta. And if we think that he was a Vedantin par excellence, definitely he was. But his compositions on Bhakti are much more than his composition on Vedanta. So very beautiful blend we see of the highest form of knowledge. He lived in the Advaitic standpoint, the depth of devotion and service to the country and to the culture. At 8 years he took sannyas. He was with his guru for another 8 years. And the next 16 years, only 16 years, just imagine. In 16 years he travelled across the country. People don't even know how many times he travelled. Generally we say 4 times. Some people say 12 times. Some people say 16 times. Travelled across the length and breadth of the country, held discussions with the various philosophers, established the glory of Vedanta, established many temples, and in 16 years' time revived the entire culture that till today we are able to understand Vedanta is because of that great master. And how sad it is that such a great master, he is not a national icon. Adi Shankara Jayanti is not even celebrated by people. There is no recognition of the fact that there was such a great master, and we need to express our gratitude to him. What was his feeling for the country? Such a great leader. National integration he brought about. One of the simple examples was he took the priests from Kerala and made them the Nambudri Brahmans. He took from here and made them the priests in Badrinath. And then from there, from the north, he took people and brought them down to the south. Imagine at those times, even today with all the travel and technology available, do we actually explore our country fully? Hardly. How many of us from here have gone to the northeast part of India? Anyone? 20%. That is a part of India. And if you actually go there, you will know what is the situation there. They don't feel that they are a part of the country. They feel so neglected. There are many other issues. So the point is that when we travel, we understand this is my country, this is what is the state of my country, this is what my culture is going through, and one revives. All great masters, Vivekananda ji, Gurudev, Shankaracharya ji, many others, they went around the country, they saw the state of the country, and once they understood this is the state of my country, they put in their efforts to revive the culture, to integrate the country. And that is the need even today, more than ever. So to such a great master, Gurudev himself was so inspired by Shankaracharya. In the Chinmaya Arti we say, Shuddha Niti Preeti Shankar Ki. That is Adi Shankaracharya. So he himself, he used to call Shankaracharya ji as the spiritual general. That we all are the soldiers in the army and he is our spiritual general. His book, there's a book called Shankara the Missionary. You should read that book. Even CIF has brought out another book called From Finite to Infinite. So the knowledge about Shankaracharya's life, we must know that who is this great master. It is not enough just if we chant the shloka about Shankaracharya in the beginning and say that yes, he was very great. Wow, how he lived Are we able to imbibe some of those and live in our life? The passion for the country, the culture that we had. And at young age of 32, he finished his work when? So that great master wrote this book. And Nirvan Shatkam is a very unique composition because it is not just a theoretical composition, but it is the Anubhav of Shankaracharya ji. So it is the experience of Shankaracharya ji which he has put in these 6 verses. So let us see the first verse once again. Play the first verse.
मनोबुद्ध्यहङ्कार चित्तानि नाहम् न च श्रोत्रजिह्वे न च घ्राणनेत्रे न च व्योमभूमिर्न तेजो न वायुः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम्.
So the very first verse, Shankaracharya ji negates the subtle body, the mind, the intellect, the memory and the ego. So what is negation actually? We cannot negate the body. The body is there. We cannot negate the mind is still there. What we have to negate is our identification with that. And what is the meaning of identification? The feeling of I am that is called identification. So I have a body is one aspect. But if I feel I am the body, that is called complete identification with the body. Like a mother is identified with the child, or a person who loves the country is identified with the country. So the person feels that I am the country, I am one with that. Those are positive examples of identification. In 1999, we had a World Workers' Conference to plan for the centenary celebrations of the Chinmaya movement. Not centenary, the Golden Jubilee celebration. So that we celebrated in 2001. So in that World Workers' Conference, Guruji came up with that slogan, I am CM, that I am Chinmaya Mission. That what is Chinmaya Mission? Chinmaya Mission is not some organization, is not some buildings, is not some kind of temples and ashrams. Those are only the infrastructure. And the people, when they feel that yes, I am Chinmaya Mission, that identification is there. Then they come together to learn, to share knowledge, to serve. That is Chinmaya Mission. Each one of us is Chinmaya Mission. So identification means I am that. I am one with that. So today our identification is with this body, mind, intellect. Now when we say that Mano, Buddhi, Hankara, Chittani, Naham, it is not that they will disappear. But our false identification with them that I am that has to be negated. So just as clearly as we see that this is a watch, in the same way one has to experience that this is the body, this is the mind. Today we don't see that. Today we say I am the body, I am the mind. So the separation is not there. So now he says, Mano Buddhi Hankara Chittani Naham. I am not the mind, because the mind which causes the bondage. All the identification, attachment is with the mind. The moment that mind becomes quiet, no identification, no attachment. Mind is what? It is the seat of emotion. So mind is the seat of emotion, intellect is the seat of thought. This distinction is made for us only to understand, otherwise it is one subtle body. That's why when we have to say that I feel love, where do we touch our hand? Say, I feel love. We don't say I feel love. And when we have to, let us say, we have to think about something, and we sit like that. Nobody says I am thinking. We hold here. So buddhi, as though, is the seat of thought, mind is the seat of emotion. So when we say I am not the mind, emotions, they rise in us. Sometimes they impulsively rise, they overwhelm us completely. We lose our objectivity and balance. Like Arjun was so overwhelmed. And then in that overwhelmed condition, he decided that I don't want to fight. So the emotional overwhelming, when it happens, then we forget everything else. So the emotions, they rise as though waves. Waves of emotions rise in our mind. When I say I am not the mind, it is to stand apart, to be able to see clearly that emotion is rising, not to get swayed by it. Emotion is going back. This can be done through the day also. Yesterday we spoke about it. They are in me, I am not in them. They arise in me, they stay and they dissolve. And they keep arising. My choice is not to get attached to them. They come and they go. So to stand apart, like how in the Gangaji when we go to take the dip, sometimes the flow is so powerful that we cannot take the dip just like that. So on the ghats we go down, then there is a chain, and hold on to the chain and then take the dip. Same way in sadhana one holds on to a mantra or to a form or to some breathing and doesn't allow the emotion to overwhelm. Deepest way is this, where I just remain as the witness. They come and they go. Even in emotion, even in the state of contemplation, sometimes it happens. Emotion will overwhelm. Suddenly you may find some people crying, some people feeling anxiety in contemplation. Because so long we have never given enough attention to the mind. We keep suppressing the emotion, keep living. So when the attention comes onto the mind, those emotions, they come out. At that moment, if I can say this, I am not this. They come and they go, let them pass. Not only negative, even the positive ones. Sometimes one feels very good. What meditation happened today? Wow, maja aa gaya. You just watch. That joy goes. One of the subtlest obstacles which comes in meditation is what it is called rasa swad. And one starts enjoying the joy that one experiences in meditation. Let it go. That is also temporary. So the emotions, they come and they go. I am not this. Because I am experiencing it. I am not the emotion. Emotion is arising and going. The mind is experiencing it. I am witnessing all this. That now the emotion has come, now it is staying, now it is going. So mana, I am not. I can practice this in contemplation if in my daily life I am able to practice what? Let not the storms of the heart cover the sun in the head. That's a saying of Gurudev. That if the agitations of my heart don't cover the clarity of my head, if I am able to practice that in the daily life, then only I can practice that in contemplation. Mind also is the seat of indecisiveness. Should I do? Should I not do? Just today in the morning you may have experienced it. Should I go? Should I not go? I don't know. Even if I go, It is all going bouncer. What will I do going there? नहीं बस जाते हैं. It's okay. अच्छा लगता है. Morning. Nothing. I get good sleep. चलो जाए. Indecisiveness. Go, not go, do, not do. So I am not that. Indecisiveness belongs to the mana. And today in the corporate world they say one of the biggest causes of stress is indecision. Not being able to decide. Not wanting to decide is another thing. That is the reason why our country is suffering. 5 years our economy has gone down because of policy paralysis. No decisions are only being passed. But then if there is wavering, what to do, then that is indecision. So mana ahamna, I am not this mind. The doubts may arise, indecision may arise. I am not a witness. I am not a party to that. I stand apart. So I am not the mind. I am not the buddhi. Buddhi is the seat of thinking. Rational logic. So we want logic for everything. Cause and effect is logic. But the Upanishads say very clearly, Naisha tarkena matirapaneya, that this truth is not attained by logic. Doesn't mean that it is illogical, but it is beyond logic. Logic has relevance only in the conceptual world. Meaning, where there are concepts, the buddhi forms concepts about everything. There logic will apply. That which is beyond all concepts is beyond logic also. Which does not have name, form, attributes, qualities, nothing. How will that come under the purview of logic? Even when the buddhi is unmanifest, this reality is. Hence, mana buddhi. So any thought that comes, I am only a witness of that thought. However good that thought is. Suppose there is a donkey which comes here. If a donkey comes, will I jump onto the donkey and sit? What will I do? I will only watch and let it go. So one Mahatma gave this example. He said, if a donkey comes, you will not jump on that. But if a thought comes, why are you jumping? Why are you getting so attached to that thought? It just came, let it go. It is only a thought. And you should know which thought to let go also. From meditation standpoint, every thought you can let go. But daily life standpoint, please, don't say that Swamiji, yesterday you said don't jump onto thought. So I got the thought, let me go to satsang, I didn't jump, I let it go. One should not do that. While we are living in the daily life, we should know which, that is vivek, what to do, what not to do, and then decisively do what is the duty. But in the seat of contemplation, no thought. Even the chanting that we do, Mano Buddhi Ahankara Chittani Naham. Yesterday we saw, we have to drop the word, drop the meaning of the word, and just focus on what it indicates. So that is the meaning of Buddhi Ahamna, because Buddhi will think. Buddhi will bring logic. How I am not the thought, thought is Jada, I am the Chaitanya. Don't bring any of that. I am not the thought. Suppose we ask in Chinmaya Mission, what is the mind? What do we say? Flow of thought. Now the next question, what is a thought? Think. Gurudev is to give an equation for thought. Thought is equal to object plus consciousness. So if I say this is a watch, now the watch is the object, so my thought recognizes that, so the watch is one part, and then I am aware that this is a watch. So that consciousness illumines that knowledge. So object plus consciousness is equal to a thought. And by itself, without consciousness there is no thought. Right now my focus is on the object part. When we say I am not the buddhi, it is to shift from that object to the consciousness. That I am the witness. Without me, the pure consciousness, there is no thought. Hence, I am not the buddhi, meaning I am the witness of the thought. And do you know what is the greatest persecution in the world? It is not racial discrimination, caste discrimination, or terrorism. That is one level of persecution. But the greatest persecution in the world is thought persecution. Our own thoughts persecute us. With the thoughts we go up, and when the thoughts take us up, thoughts throw us down also. And we get persecuted by our thought. Jealousy persecutes us. Anger persecutes us. Ambition, we get so attached to that persecutes us. So our own thoughts, they persecute us because we have given them the power. We are not able to see our distinction beyond that. There was a philosopher, I think he's called, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Descartes or Descartes, some name he has. So he said, I think, therefore I am. So that whole identity I derive from the thought. Vedanta says, no, I am, so I think. That's the difference. So I can remain without the thought, but thought cannot remain without me. So I am not the thought, I am not the emotion. Today I don't know what is that state which is beyond thought. Only state I know is absence of thought, and that is sleep. So the moment the thinking has to stop, one goes to sleep. So I don't know any other state. If I have to define myself, I have to define myself only through the thought. Without thought, if I have to define myself, I don't know who am I. So it says, Manaha na aham, buddhihi na aham. Buddhi also makes the concepts. Whatever it sees, it makes a concept of it. So if I see the watch, now there is a concept in the buddhi. Watch keeps the time. Watch is very important. Time is very necessary. Today time is money. It has made all the concepts. So about everything it makes concepts. So about truth also it makes concepts. So when I say I am not the buddhi, means I have to be concept free. Even Sat, Chit, Anand is not a concept to be held on to. It is only to negate what the truth is not. The truth is not an object. It is existence which pervades everywhere. It is not Jada, so it is Chit. And it is not Dukkha Swarupa, so we say it is Anand. So one holds on to no concept. That is called Tyaga. That's why it says Tyage Naike Amritatva Manashuhu. Drop all the concepts. Swamiji, we did not pick it up only. Where is the question of dropping it? It is like the pole. We hold on to the pole, go up, and then leave the pole to cross over the bar. If I don't hold on to the pole, it is difficult. But at the same time, I should know when to leave. In this state of contemplation, I have to leave. I can't leave before. There was once, one ant. And this ant was going everywhere, searching something, very fast. So the other creatures asked the ant, Arey, what are you doing? He said, I am searching for that elephant. Where is that elephant? So somebody said, the elephant, I think the elephant is in the lake. You go there. So the ant went there. And his ant found that the elephant is taking bath. So the ant said, "You elephant, come out." So this elephant also, the ant is calling. So ant came out. Elephant came out. So when the elephant came out, the ant goes around the elephant and he said, "Chha, gave a disgusting look." So the elephant said, "Hey, what happened?" He said, "No, I lost my swimsuit and I just thought that maybe you are wearing that. That's why I called you to check." Now that anecdote ends very beautifully. It says that perhaps an elephant may fit into the swimsuit of an ant, but God cannot fit into the concept of human thinking. The reality or the truth is infinite. It cannot fit into the concept of human thinking. And how strange we are. If you go out into the world, you will listen to this argument. That God did not create man, man created God. That all these forms which are there, no? Shiva, Vishnu, Krishna, Durga, not Krishna, but yeah, even Krishna, people don't believe only that he was a historical man. So they think that these are all created by human being, and the very concept of God is created by human being only to enforce morality, some dharma, to create some fear. There is nothing called God. There is only some energy. That is another concept of God, which they don't understand. They also created a concept only. By rejecting the reality, they have created another concept. That reality is not this, but reality is this. It is energy, it is nature, it is power. What else have we done? It's the same thing. So when we say na buddhi, it means that using different concepts, we lift our intellect to such a height that we transcend that intellect. From intellect to the intuition, that is the transcendence that happens in Nididhyasana. We use logic, no doubt. In Mananam stage, lot of logic is used to give that conviction that how I am that absolute truth, I am not this BMI. In the state of Nididhyasana, we reject all the concepts. Go into the state of intuitive understanding of the reality. So manaha na aham, buddhi na aham, chitta is memory. Now chitta and chit are two different things. Many languages we don't distinguish that. Some of the North Indian languages they will say sat, chitta, ananda. They will emphasize that ta. Chit and chitta, they are two different things. Chit is pure consciousness. Chitta is memory. The reserve bank of all the experiences, conclusions, what all we have gone through in form of pictures, we store in the chitta, the memory. And that memory helps us to take the decision. The buddhi takes the decision based on the memory. Now why it is said I am not the memory? Because we are very attached to that memory. Memory is just information which is available for the buddhi to decide. But we hold on to that memory so much. And there are two types of memory. One is called as a functional memory, other is called as a psychological memory. So functional memory doesn't have to be negated. Psychological memory has to get negated. Negated meaning, I should not identify with these. What does that mean? We hold on. The positive memories we hold on. That I achieved such and such thing in this year and it was such a nice thing. Or we hold on to some praise that somebody had given. Or we hold on to some love that we felt from someone. So we make memories of it and they are there and then we hold on to them. Or even some enjoyment. And these memories, they trouble us when we go to the ashram. Meaning, when we go to a camp and sattvic ahar is there, no onion, no garlic, no, none of that. And 7 days we have to live there. In early days, the cell phone and so many things were not available. And when people used to go to Sidbari, all around Sidbari also, there is no shops or anything. You have to go to the shop, you have to go to Dharamshala. So first 3 days people are in bliss. Swamiji, we have come to heaven. This is so nice. Full day, we are meditating, we are reflecting, we are in satsang. Feels so good, Why? Because they have got tired from the worldly living. One has come into the ashram, one is staying. There is a change. 4th day, slowly one comes. Swamiji, can I go? I have to make a call, some urgent family matter is there. Can I go there? Actually, the person is not going just to make the call. The person is going there to eat pakoda. Because in the early morning meditation, that pakoda keeps coming into the mind. Because one is so used to that fried item or some chatpat food, the memory troubles. So why should we not hold on to memory? Because favorable memory gives rise to desire. Unfavorable memory gives rise to fear, anxiety. So we hold on to memory. Meditation goes for a toss. Psychology says 60,000 thoughts we think in a day. 60,000. In that 60,000 thoughts, more than 55% of the thoughts are repeated. We have created patterns of thinking in our head. All memories are created. So I am not this, meaning the memory, I should not brood over the memories. In meditation, the mind goes to the memories. Especially if the mind wanders a lot and I am tired, where does the mind go? To relax. To relax mentally, what do? I think of something which is pleasurable, enjoyable. So mind goes there. So I am not the memory, I am not the emotion, I am not the buddhi, I am not the ahankara, the doer. Aham karomi iti ahankara, that I am doing. So the sense of doership and enjoyership. The stronger is the sense of doership, enjoyership, greater will be our identification. And vice versa. Greater the identification, stronger is the doership. And it is this doership that causes stress, not karma. Stress comes to us not because of action, but it comes to us because of doership. That I am doing. Without me this will not happen. Or the sense of self-importance. Psychologically, when I depend on that, that creates the division, that creates the stress. And that makes me feel I am separate, world is separate, God is separate. As long as this ahankar, this perceiver, feeler, thinker, this does not arise, the duality also is not there. Hence in meditation we say that I am not this. Even the thought I am meditator, I am not that. I am. One should stop with that. Not add any other adjectives. Then I am doing contemplation. So in the day-to-day life, when I am living in the spirit of Karma Yoga, when I am working together in a team, dissolving my differences, working for a noble cause, this ego comes down. Our Guruji, Pujya Swami Tejomayanand, he always tells us that we are very worried about BP, blood pressure, but we are not bothered about EP, that is ego pressure. And it is ego pressure only which creates all the blood pressure also to us. But how much are we bothered about EP? This is in the day-to-day life, working with people is the best way to rub off our ego. Let the ego reduce. Then one is very, very light. In the seat of contemplation, one is able to sit and one will take off. So mano, buddhi, ahankara, chittani naham. Why do we say I am not all these? Because they are constantly changing. My emotions change, my thoughts change, the memories change. My sense of I also keeps changing, minute by minute. So they are changing, they are inert, they are seen, and I am the seer. So all that logic when we apply, and we say I am not this. Nacha shrotra jihve, nacha ghrana netre. I am not the sense organs. It is actually common sense. But then identification is so much. If there is a window and I am seeing through the window, I am staying on 27th floor somewhere. So through the window we see such beautiful scenery, early morning. So through the window I am seeing. Am I the seer who is seeing through the window, or am I the window? It's common sense to know that I am the seer seeing through the window. But do we feel like that? That I am the perceiver perceiving the object through the senses? That I am someone else who is watching through the eyes, listening through the ears, speaking through the mouth? I am seeing, I am hearing, I am tasting, I am touching. So I am only all these. That these senses are separate. I am separate. So Shrotra, Jiva, Grahana and Netra. 4 senses have been pointed out here. Shrotra is the ears, Jiva is the tongue, Grahana is the nose, and Netra is the eyes. Why the 5th one is not told? Skin. Gurudev used to give a very nice example for that. He said this Shrotra, Jihva, Grahana and Netra. So he said that this Jihva is actually the skin. If you ever make an idol, and if you have to make the tongue of that idol, what will you do? The whole idol is made, and then so he says that this outer skin, when it is pushed inside, that has become the tongue. So that's why the tongue and the skin are together, they are one actually. And that is why you will see in the Gita chariot, there are only 4 horses. So many people apply their head thinking, no, it is a mistake, senses are 5, horses are only 4. So when there are 4 horses, it means Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Raja Yoga. And if there are 5 horses, it means 5 senses. No, 4 horses only. And 4 horses mean the 5 senses. So he says, I am not these. Shrotra, Jiva, Grahana, Netra, I am not the senses. I function through the senses. So even when we are living in the world, we can practice this. When I am eating, I can tell myself that I am eating through the tongue. I am seeing through the eyes. I am hearing through the ears. But I am not these. Especially the tongue. Because I think I am that, the pleasure of the tongue is my pleasure. And just imagine what all we do. 2-inch tongue, that is, only 2 inch. Before that there is no taste. After that there is no taste. And to satisfy that 2 inch of the tongue, my God. Whole life actually is meant for that 2 inch of the tongue. If you ask that question, that do I eat to live or live to eat, what will be the answer? Oh no, Swamiji, I eat to live. Then we should eat something else only which is good for the body. But the fact is that we are living to eat. If we say that eat healthy food, salad, sprouts, vegetables, fruits, dry fruits, वो क्या है? वो घास फूस. We live to eat. That's the fact. Not only we live to eat, for satisfying that 2 inch of the tongue, how many kilometers we will cross and go to so many places. Not only that, how much violence went on, how many animals are killed. just for the 2 inch of the tongue. Vedanta says, the pleasure of the senses is not my pleasure. And actually it is not even in the senses. Is the pleasure there on the tongue? It is only in the mind. So I am not these, meaning the condition of these senses is not my condition. If the eye is going through a problem, eye is going through a problem, not me. If tongue is enjoying, the tongue is enjoying. I can stand apart. Then it says, Nacha vyoma bhumir na tejo na vayu. The 5 elements. All these 5 elements, they are the cause of the mind, intellect, memory, ego, senses. These are the effects. 5 elements are the cause. The subtle 5 elements, those of you who know Tattva Bodh, we have understood that the subtle 5 elements in their pure form, they give rise to each sense faculty, and the sattvic aspect of all these subtle 5 elements comes together to make the mind. So the mind is the sense, mind is the 5 elements. And the senses also, they are gross 5 elements, sense organs, and the body, and the world outside. So when we say that these 5 elements I am not, it is to negate all the gross objects, and also to tell us that mind also is jada only. It is not something sentient on its own. What gives it sentiency is Chidananda Rupa. That Chit enlivens this body, mind, intellect, and it appears sentient. So that, because of which this inert appears sentient, is Chit, is consciousness. It only illumines, it only enlivens. In Vedanta, the principle is very simple. Illuminator is not affected by the illumined. So the movie which is being projected on the screen is never touched by the movie. Or the lamp which illumines all the objects. The objects will never contaminate the lamp. So the illuminator is never touched by the illumined. Same way, in us there is this pure consciousness which illumines, as we saw, object plus consciousness is equal to the thought. So the object will never touch that consciousness. Emotions, thoughts, even the sense, perceptions, none of that will touch that consciousness. It remains unaffected. And it is that which is infinite. Chit. The moment we think of consciousness, we think of life. So we think consciousness is only equal to something which is living. Because you can see the expression of consciousness. Seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, touching, feeling, thinking. But consciousness is present everywhere. Even in this, consciousness is there. Then what is the difference between this and this? This does not have the subtle body, the mind, intellect, memory, ego. Because subtle body is not there, it is not capable of expressing life. But consciousness is there in this, in the form of isness, in the form of existence. So consciousness is all pervasive. Depending on the presence of subtle body, it expresses as life. So that consciousness is infinite, is the illuminator, and as infinite consciousness, there is no boundary. It is Ananta, and hence we say Ananda, because there is no cause for sorrowing. So when we say Chidananda Rupa, that I am that consciousness which illumines the mind, the body, the intellect, I am not the body, mind, intellect, or the states of the body, mind, intellect. I am that infinite consciousness in which all the bodies are there. Chara and Achara, inert and sentient. And it is of the nature of bliss, Ananda. At the body level we feel pleasure. At the mind level we feel joy. At the intellectual level we feel happiness. But when we transcend this identification, these are all caused by object, emotions, thoughts. When we transcend this identification, we experience bliss. That is Ananda. Uncaused, unchanging, infinite bliss. That is my nature. So that which I generally seek as eternal happiness is the bliss which is my nature. So again and again I reiterate to myself, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. Shiva means that which is auspicious, that which is not, that because of which everything is auspicious is Shiva. So the body is auspicious only because of the presence of Shiva. Otherwise you think about it, what all comes out from the body is all dirt and filth. Mind has its own impurities. 6 mala are there in the mind, 6 impurities. Buddhi has its own confusions, problems. Ignorance and vasana is there in the causal body. Each of these, there is no auspiciousness. Only that which is auspicious is pure Atma, consciousness. So when I say Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham, I stand apart from the Upadhi and experience myself as the illuminated. So for today we will stop here and we will just listen to the Nirvana Shloka. Please sit erect. The head, the neck and the spine in a straight line. Close your eyes gently. Be aware of the happenings around you. Be aware of the body from the head to the toes. Be aware of the breath. Inhale slowly, steadily and deeply. And exhale slowly, steadily and completely. In the space between the 2 eyebrows or in your heart, visualize a circle of white light. Invoke the auspicious form of the Sadguru or the Lord. Visualize that you are in front of the Sadguru or the Lord with folded hands, seeking the grace that may our mind abide in contemplation. With all surrender and devotion, let us chant together. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Mentally prostrate to the Sadguru or the Lord. It is the Sadguru's grace that we have the knowledge of the self. We are able to reflect and contemplate. So as we listen to the Nirvan Shatkam, let the words go deep into the quiet mind and lift the mind to the state conveyed by the words.
Mano buddhyahankara cittani naham na cha shrotra jihve na cha ghrana netre na cha vyoma bhumin na tejo na vayuh चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं 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 सदा चिन्मयोऽहं सदा सच्चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं 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 सदा चिन्मयोऽहं न च प्राणसंज्ञो न वै पञ्चवायुः न वा सप्तधातुर्न वा पञ्चकोशः न वा पाणिपादौ न चोपस्थपायुः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न मे द्वेषरागौ न मे लोभमोहौ मदो नैव मे नैव मात्सर्यभावः न धर्मो न चार्थो न कामो न मोक्षः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न पुण्यं न पापं न सौख्यं न दुःखं न मन्त्रो न तीर्थो न वेदा न यज्ञाः अहं भोजनं नैव भोज्यं न भोक्ता चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न मे मृत्युशङ्का न मे जातिभेदः पिता नैव मे नैव माता न जन्म न बन्धुर्न मित्रं गुरुर्नैव शिष्यः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं सदा चिन्मयोऽहं शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं सदा चिद्घनोऽहं सदा सच्चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं 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 शिवोऽहम् अहं निरोविकल्पो निराकाररूपः विभुर्व्याप्य सर्वत्र सर्वेन्द्रियाणां सदा मे समत्वं न मुक्तिर्न बन्धः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं 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 सदा चिन्मयोऽहं सदा सच्चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं 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 सदा चिद्घनोऽहं शिवोऽहं 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 शिवोऽहम्
As we go through the day's activities, may we remember that I am consciousness playing the role, I am not the role. Let us try and maintain this bhavana. If this is difficult, then maintain the bhav that I am a seeker. Offer some flowers at the feet of the Sadguru, prostrate in front of the Sadguru. Let us pray for the well-being of everyone. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu. मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ओम शांति शांति शांति। हरि ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरि